They warned him, but Obinna laughed. He was young, proud, and hungry. So when the priest turned away, he took the yam meant for the gods and ate. That night, his laughter turned to screams. He spoke names he didn't know, and the village whispered he had eaten what belonged to the unseen. But mercy found him. A mother's tears, a pastor's prayer, and the blood that speaks better things broke the chains pride had forged. He learned that some doors stay shut for a reason, and some meals are not yours to taste. Now, when asked why he never eats at the grove, he smiles and says, "I've learned what to feed and what to leave on the table." The drums began before sunset, calling the village together the way rain calls ants out of the ground. It was the New Yam Festival, the night the people of Umuapara thanked the ancestors and the land for letting yam grow fat in their ridges. Traders folded their mats. Children slicked their faces with palm oil to shine. Masquerades, some playful, some not, stamped dust into the small storms. A goat bleated its last. Smoke rose like a ribbon over the shrine grove. Obinna tied a red cloth at his waist and laughed too loudly, the way boys laughed when they are trying to outrun the weight in their chest. He was 20, full of promise, good with his hands and quicker with his mouth. He had ideas about Lagos and had ideas about Adaeze, the catkiss daughter with the eyes like late mangoes. But for now there was yam to pound, songs to sing, and a feast to push back hunger's memory. At the edge of the grove, where the path bent round a fig tree, sat a wooden table darkened by years of oil. On it, gourd of palm wine, 3 calabashes of peppered goat, roasted plantain, kola, and a mound of new yam steamed till smoke looked sweet. The elders had placed it there as the first portion, for the gods, they said, before the people could eat what remained. Obinna watched the priest smear chalk on the table and speak names in a voice like a torn drum. He wasn't much for fear. What can gods do with food? He muttered to his friend Emeka, "They have no mouth." Emeka's laugh was small and begged him not to say more. The grove thickened with music. When the priest led the procession to the square, the path was briefly empty, wind moving softly through the leaves. Obinna's heartbeat slid into reckless rhythm. He walked to the table because the air told him to. He lifted the calabash lid because pride told him to. He pinched off a piece of yam because hunger told him to. And then he ate what had been set apart. The first bite was heat and salt and smoke. Nothing fell from the sky. No thunder cracked. Pride smelled inside him like a new coin. He ate again, this time dipping the yam in peppered goat. And he said to no one, "See? Nothing." That night he learned the difference between nothing and not yet. They danced until moonrise. The masquerade in raffia with the black streak marks cracks the skin on the ground and made children squeal. Adaeze clapped without looking at Obinna, which made him feel both smaller and more alive. He walked her as far as the church gate and folded his foolish mouth around new promises he'd made to himself. When he finally stumbled into his mother's compound, the fire had died and the compound dog had curled into himself like a coma. It began with a cough that wasn't a cough. A bubble rose in his throat and burst copper against his tongue. His stomach turned as if a hand had reached inside and twisted. Obinna lurched into the courtyard and fell to his knees. Blood came out of him like a confession. Between heaves, names poured from his mouth. Names he did not know he knew. Old syllables that cut the night like a blade through raffia. Ekwensi, Ajija, Namiri. His mother Neka ran out with the lantern and a wrapper clutched to her chest. "Chineke," she cried out, and she knelt and gathered her son as if he were still a baby, with a moon stamped on his forehead. The lantern flame in her shaking hand bent and straightened like a reed. "Who did you quarrel with? Who touched you?" Obinna spat red. He tried to say, "No one," but another name came instead. Not even the elders avoided after dark. The compound dog fled under the granary with the wine. Neighbors peered over the low wall, curiosity first, then fear. And someone ran towards the mango tree where Mama Ngozi, the old midwife and sometimes seer, liked to sit when the night needed watching. By the time Mama Ngozi arrived, a circle of women had formed and prayers were buzzing like bees that had lost their hive. The woman's eye had the shine of wet wood. She did not ask many questions. She asked one, "What touched the boy's mouth today?" Silence fell like a sheet. Obinna gagged. His mother's tears fell into the back of his neck and mixed with dust into mud. "Speak," Mama said softly. "Let the truth open the door." Obinna coughed up a cracked laugh. "Yam," he said, almost surprised to himself. "Yam for the gods." A thin wind slid over the courtyard, and you could hear the mango leaves decide what to do with the news. "Ah," Mama Ngozi breathed, sorrow walking through her voice. "You ate a name you could not carry." She told them to fetch warm water and charcoal, salt and oil, a clean cloth and a small wooden cross the catechist kept. She sent for the pastor too, because there are nights when you need more than herbs and rebuke. "We will not bow to the invisible," she said, "but we must not pretend the invisible is not here." Word moved the way it always moved in Omopara, faster than motorcycles, shaped like whatever mouth carried it. "He stole the god's food," someone whispered at the well. "He will die before dawn." Another said, "It serves him. Pride fattens good for the knife." But others wrapped themselves in wrappers and fear and came to the compound anyway, because grief is a communal language and nobody wants to be found illiterate. The pastor arrived before the cock knew itself. Bible under his arm, rain smelled in his clothes. He did not strike in like a hero. He came like a man who knew what his hands could not do and who could. He knelt in the dust beside Nneka and Obinna and greeted them first. Then he listened to Mama Ngozi repeat the truth without spice. He nodded slowly. "What is offered to idols brings bondage," he said, "not scolding, only naming. But the blood of Jesus speaks a better word than any sacrifice." Obinna shivered. The names in his mouth felt like fish bones, and he coughed them out, one by unwanted one. Each name fell on the ground like a seed that refused to sprout. The pastor opened the book of Hebrews. The old woman pressed the warm cloth dipped in oil and salt to Obinna's forehead. Nneka sang low, a mother's song that had rocked him through fevers and spilled his nightmares. "Jesus," the pastor prayed, "close every open door that pride has kicked wide. We bring this boy under your covenant. We plead, your blood speaks better things." The wind lifted. Somewhere a rooster remembered morning and tried to bring it. Obinna asked and went still. For a long minute, all anyone could hear was the small language of breathing. Then he began to weep, quiet at first, with a sound like old wood breaking. Then weeping emptied him. He slept, a sleep that did not fight him. Dawn peeled itself over the ridges. The village looked different and exactly the same, the way face looks after telling the truth. When Obinna opened his eyes, the names were gone from his tongue, and the taste of iron had retreated like a tide. His chest felt tendered, as if a strap had been cut off from around his ribs. He reached for his mother's hand, and she was already there, a small laugh bursting out with her tears like a pot refusing to boil quietly. They fed him watered pap. He kept it down. The pastor gave thanks without drama, then looked at the broken light in everyone's faces and said, "Deliverance is a door. Walk it. Don't make a bet on the threshold." Obinna slept again, this time with his cheek turned towards the open courtyard like a boy still listening to the word. But deliverance rarely closes the story with a neat bow. It loses not, and the wind has its say. The first test found him that afternoon. The priest came. He wore white and carried a staff carved with the history of the grove. His mouth knew how to bless and blind, depending on who listened. He stood just beside Nneka's gate and did not sit when they offered him a stool. "A word and we end this," he said, rolling the staff slowly in his hand as if turning the sky. "Your boy ate the portion. Such things have a price." Nneka's back straightened, not with pride but with a mother's algebra. What you add, what you subtract, what you refuse to borrow, he has already been bought. He said simply, with a better blood. The priest's eyes hardened as if drying in sun. "There are old debts on this land you do not know. You will not be the first to learn why fathers brought wine to the grove." Mama Ngozi, who had been shelling groundnuts under the mango tree, rose with her knees making their small complaints. She walked to the gate and put her palm on the post. "Leave the boy," she told the priest with a voice that sounded like shade. "Take your staff and your stories. If the land wants repayment, let Jesus and the idols discuss it among themselves. For us, the argument is finished." The priest's nose flared. He looked past them to Obinna sleeping under a thin cloth and muttered a name that tasted like a thorn. Then he turned and left. his staff biting the path in even intervals. That evening, men at the palm wine place argued in circles big enough for goats to walk through. "You don't spit on old shrines," one said. "The boy should appease." Another replied softly, "Or he should be free." The wind came and then rain, and everybody's certainty went homeward. For a week, Obinna kept mostly to the yard, because the body remains what the soul tries to forget. At night, dreams came like fishermen at a river, some friendly, some with nets. When fear knocked, his mother's voice answered with prayer. When shame tried to rehearse itself, the pastor's words interrupted. Obinna learned to call Jesus' name without ceremony, the way a child calls mama when something breaks. On the 7th day, he went to the grove with Neka and the pastor, not to bargain, but to say goodbye. The air smelled like wet bark, leaves lifted their faces, and the old table, Obinna set down a calabash of water and cluster of bitter kola. He did not pour, he did not chant, he simply said, "I will not eat what is not mine again." Because pride had been his first thief, he added, "I will not call mine what belongs to God." They prayed with eyes open, because there is beauty to see when we pray in the forest. On the path back, a burst of butterflies rose from a bush like a colorful idea and went to tell somebody else. The next twist came on market day. Work was slow at the bicycle repair store where Obinna sometimes helped, and idle hands picked at old scarps. 3 boys started a story with his name and ended it with a goat's laugh. He gave the goat indigestion. One said, "Now he will live on pap forever." Laughter passed from mouth to mouth like a palm nut. Adeze, who was choosing tomatoes with a seriousness that made sellers give her the best, heard them and shook her head, the way you do when you see someone trying to drink dust. She walked to the store and stood in the shade. "Obinna," she said in her careful voice, "I brought you roasted corn, not for pity, for stubbornness." Eat stubbornly and live stubbornly. He took the corn and something in his sweet loosened. He didn't say the speech his pride had prepared. He just said, "Thank you." At home, he nailed a small plank above the door and wrote on it with charcoal, "Kept." Not as a challenge, as a reminder. 2 weeks later, the masked dancer who frightened children for sports and men for old reasons came stamping into the square with a cane that had tasted too many bags. He stopped in front of Obinna, who had been helping Emeka patch a tire. "The river remembers," the dancer intoned, voice muffled behind wood. "Those who eat first must pay fast." Obinna felt the village's eye gather like birds on a wire. He remembered vomit and names, and a mother's hand steadying a lantern. He remembered a staff at his gate and his old arrogance, the kind that asked to be slapped. "I have already paid," he said, not looking brave, only unafraid, not with goats, with confession. The dancer's chest heaved, the cane trembled. For a heartbeat, Obinna thought the wood would fly. Then the dancer made a small, human noise, the kind you hear when somebody puts down a weight they had carried too well. He stamped once more, softer, and walked away. Later, someone saw the dancer behind the church shed, mask off, washing his face. No one needed to narrate what happened between mask and water. Obinna's appetite returned the way the dry season returns. Quiet at first, then with the brightness people cheerful. He ate yam that remembers soil and stew that remembers sun. Not in gulps as if wrestling, but in grateful mouthfuls. A man learning how to use a gift without making an idol. When the cast asked for volunteers to paint the church eaves, Obinna raised his hand before he could think. Afterward, he fixed 3 broken stools at the school for free and laughed when the headmaster insisted on paying him with a basket of garden eggs and a promise to look the other way next time he came late. Work did not explode into wealth, it unfolded into dignity. One evening, as the Harmattan made everyone's lips crack and their patience crackle, Obinna sat with his mother under the mango tree. Adeze came by with a basin of ogbono seeds for her mother and stayed with them longer than her feet needed to be still. They talked about small things, where the best cassava cuttings might be found this season, whether goats dream, if the new teacher's accent would ever soften, because the big things had already been said to God. A man with white wrapper, the kind you could fold into a pillow if you wanted to sleep, walked in from the road and asked for water. He was shorter than you expected messengers to be, and his eyes were black as cola. Obinna had shook, the body remembering old scripts, but he took a calabash from the stand and gave to the man to drink. The man drank the way thirsty people do, then smiled with the mouth that had seen both storms and kitchens. The one you insulted does not carry your name anymore, he said, setting the calabash down like a blessing. Keep the covenant you chose, and leave the dead their debts. He glanced towards the doorway where Neka had placed a plate covered with a raffia mat, and he nodded, satisfied with the common holiness of a covered meal. Then he walked away into the evening without waiting to be thanked. Obinna didn't sleep much that night, not from fear, but from awe. Before dawn, he lit the fire and tried to make tea for his mother. It tasted like boiled porridge. She drank it anyway. Years later, the waves scraped the skin clean, and stories taking the air at the palm oil lantern edges. Umukpara still tell the tale of the boy who ate what belonged to the gods and lived to be hungry another day. They say, what is offered to idols brings bondage. You may eat it with your mouth and only realize later your soul has been swallowing chains. They add, Jesus sets free. His blood speaks better things than any sacrifice, louder than any good cries and stronger than names you didn't mean to learn. They advise the clever, pride is a poor counselor. It tells you that doors are just wood. It doesn't mention who holds the keys. They comfort the mother who pray until her voice turns to smoke. Heaven counts those prayers like coins and spends them at the right time. And they tell the young who are hurried to be old. Shortcuts are circles that leave you exactly where you started, only more tired. If you pass by Obinna's house now, you may hear the scrape of plane on wood, the honest rap that makes it steady. You might catch him at noon, head bow over a single place his mother set with authority of love. Yam remembers soil, still remembers the sun. He eats slowly, by a decision, as if space between bites were another kind of prayer. And if you ask him why he does not drink at the grove or leave coins beneath the fig tree, he will not argue doctrine. He will just smile, point his mouth, and say, I have learned what to feed and what to leave on the table.
Please subscribe to watch more of our videos. Thank you.